Hello, I'm Tim Hinkle, the Assistant Commissioner for the Division of Modal Planning and Program Management at the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Welcome to this four-part video series on transportation asset management, developed by the Federal Highway Administration's Transportation Asset Management Expert Task Group, or the ETG. As chairman of the ETG, it's my hope that you'll find this video helpful as you implement an asset management program in your organization. Through the ETG, the Federal Highway Administration is promoting transportation asset management with its partners at the American Association of State and Transportation Officials, Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, and the Transportation Research Board. Transportation asset management is important for any agency that plans, owns, or operates a transportation network. Asset management is a strategic and systematic process of operating, maintaining, and improving physical assets, with a focus on both engineering and economic analysis based upon quality information to identify a structured sequence of maintenance, preservation, repair, rehabilitation, and replacement actions that will achieve and sustain a desired state of good repair of the life cycle of the assets at minimum practicable costs. In order to support the growing interest in implementing asset management and the federal laws and regulations concerning asset management, FHWA established the ETG with the mission to support the increased interest in transportation asset management in order to sustain our nation's transportation infrastructure. The ETG membership includes representatives of state DOTs, the Transportation Research Board, metropolitan planning organizations, academia, and international transportation officials. It also regularly engages representatives from transit agencies and local governments. The ETG provides one of the few forums in which representatives from these various disciplines can meet and discuss how to coordinate their efforts to support sound asset management. The main activities of the ETG are to, number one, describe a framework for the financially sustainable management of infrastructure that integrates asset management with performance management, risk management, long-term financial planning, and sound stewardship of our nation's transportation assets. Second, identify strategies to advance asset management practices. Third, support states in their change management efforts. Fourth, address gaps in our collective asset management practices. And last, provide a forum for discussing emerging asset management issues and agency needs. This four-part video series represents one of many ETG outreach activities. The four videos in this series and the companion white papers cover the following topics: integrating transportation asset management into agency business practices, developing human capital and organizational culture to support asset management, integration of transportation asset management into the planning process, and defining cross-asset decision-making. Look for the video series and a wide range of resources, including more information about the ETG at the Transportation Asset Management Information Portal at tam.transportation.org. Integrating asset management plans into transportation agency processes. Let me define asset management before I proceed further. We use the formal definition included in USC Title 23, Section 101, which is the following. The term asset management means a strategic and systematic process of operating, maintaining, and improving physical assets, with a focus on both engineering and economic analysis based upon quality information, to identify a structured sequence of maintenance, preservation, repair, rehabilitation, and replacement actions that will achieve and sustain a desired state of good repair over the life cycle of the assets at a minimum practicable cost. Federal statute requires state departments of transportation to develop a transportation asset management plan. These plans will address strategies and investments to sustain transportation assets in good condition and apply at least to the assets on the National Highway System, known as the NHS. Because these plans are new in the U.S., state DOTs face the challenge of integrating them into their already mature processes. The plans intersect with many agency decision-making processes and therefore require coordination with many internal and external partners and decision-makers. We on the ETG strongly believe that if these asset management plans are not fully integrated into agency processes, their full potential benefit will not be realized. Based upon the consensus of the ETG members, this video and its accompanying briefing paper addresses the following processes into which the asset management should be integrated. These include the state budgeting process, the project selection priorities of the metropolitan planning organizations and hundreds of local agencies they represent, the overall transportation planning process, including long-range plans and transportation improvement programs, the decision-making processes of internal agency officials who often work in silos and may not coordinate their decisions with other asset owners, the priorities of agency maintenance staff, the planning and budgeting of future maintenance costs created by building new assets, the agency's information technology systems, the risk management processes, and the agency's efforts to communicate its investment needs to external decision makers. We will take each of these in order. For the asset management plans to be meaningful, they should influence the state's budgeting process. If they do not, legislators could appropriate state and federal funds contrary to the long-term strategies represented in the asset management plan. This figure illustrates that each asset management plan likely will span 10 years. That time frame represents half of the long-range plan period, but encompasses 2 1/2 STIP periods and 5 state biennial budgets. Although federally required, the asset management plan lacks any legal foundation in most state budgeting processes. The ETG members suggest that state DOTs view each biennial budget request as a component of their long-range plan, 10-year asset management strategies as suggested in their TAMP. By placing their 2-year budget request into the context of a 10-year asset management plan, agencies can better illustrate the long-term benefits of asset management. Reducing maintenance appears to save money when legislators only look at a 2-year horizon. However, when the agency illustrates the 10-year costs of reducing maintenance, preservation, and other investment, it becomes clear that the agency does not save money. It only pushes maintenance and preservation costs into the future. Also, the future costs will be higher than today's costs because the assets will deteriorate and inflation will increase. Therefore, the ETG suggests that agencies view their asset management plans as a 10-year investment framework for drafting their annual or biennial budget requests. A good asset management plan includes analysis of how asset conditions will decline or improve based upon different investment levels. Hopefully, that analysis will influence budgeters who will appropriate each biennial budget with an understanding of the long-term consequences of today's investment decisions. Even more critically, in some states, legislators identify by line item almost every agency project. If legislators select projects without understanding their asset management implications, the asset management plan could become moot. Agencies benefit from asset management plans because they document the future consequences of underinvestment. Underinvesting today leads to higher costs tomorrow. Short-term budgets ignore these higher future costs, which are liabilities the states eventually must address. The asset management plan provides a framework and long-term context that illustrates the long-term consequences of today's investment decisions. This slide illustrates the future consequences of one state's lack of pavement investment. It forecasts that statewide pavement conditions will decline from 87% good to only 39% of the lane miles in good condition by 2023. These types of forecasts put into context the consequences of today's investment decisions. The state's long-range planning and programming processes also benefit if coordinated with the asset management plan. Today, state long-range transportation plans vary in the degree to which they address the need to sustain asset conditions. By coordinating the state's long-range plan with its asset management plan, the state can identify more precisely the long-term investment levels necessary to sustain highway and bridge conditions, not just in the short term, but for the long term. This integration also supports long-term investment in preservation and maintenance levels. Just as in the budgeting process, when the long-term benefits of preservation and maintenance are illustrated, it becomes clear that they are sound, long-term investments. Asset management plans can play a similar role in the MPO planning and project selection processes. Asset management plans provide MPO staff and board members a long-term analysis of the consequences of today's project selection decisions. Coordinated decision-making between the state, MPOs, and local governments assumes greater importance because of the federal requirements to achieve and sustain bridge and pavement conditions on the national highway system. Many sections of the NHS are under local control. States, MPOs, and local agencies face the need to coordinate the region's investment decision-making to achieve or sustain these condition levels. The expert task group anticipates that state agencies and their local and regional partners will develop a shared understanding of the investment decisions that will be necessary to sustain these condition levels. The expert task group members observed that the metropolitan planning process today focuses heavily upon important issues such as mobility, environmental justice, air quality, access, and economic development. The task group suggests that asset management will join those issues as key priorities for the metropolitan planning and project selection processes. This emerging focus on asset management spurs MPO boards to better understand asset management and how it supports the long-term sustainability of their transportation network. The expansion of asset management into the metropolitan planning process expands the focus on sustainability. In recent years, planners focused on environmental sustainability as a key objective. Now the financial sustainability of assets also joins the sustainability discussion. The ETG also believes that the asset management focus at the state and regional levels also will encourage local governments to better understand how asset management can help them sustain their local assets. It is highly likely that MPOs and states will want to work with local governments to encourage regional pavement and bridge management systems to support local as well as regional decision-making. While asset management plans will spur greater external coordination, they also are likely to stimulate greater internal agency coordination. Although transportation agencies vary significantly, in many of them silos exist between key divisions. Those who plan projects may or may not coordinate with those who design them, or build them, or maintain them. Improved coordination over the life of assets reduces the long-term life cycle cost of them. Hopefully, the asset management plans will accentuate and support such coordination. The ETG suggests that asset management plans will incent all the divisions within the transportation agencies to improve their coordination at each stage of an asset's life cycle. If a bridge is completed in year 1, preferably the asset manager coordinates with the programming and maintenance staff to ensure its deck is resealed in year 10, its beams are repainted in year 20, and its deck replaced at year 30, if those are the optimal cycles. Instead of waiting for deterioration to appear, the treatments are anticipated and identified years in advance. The advance warning hopefully triggers the planning, programming, design, construction, inspection, and maintenance staffs to anticipate and coordinate their piece of the asset management cycle. Even better, the coordination will lead to shared understanding of how the treatments can be improved so that assets last longer and cost less over their life cycle. The need for these coordinated treatments should include a feedback loop to the asset management plan. If resources don't exist for the proper treatment at the proper time, that information feeds back so that it can be captured and reported to budgeters, legislators, MPOs, and other decision makers. In this way, accumulating backlogs of maintenance and preservation are not off the books, but clearly documented to decision makers. Another key area for coordination lies with integrating the asset management plan with the day-to-day frontline activities of the maintenance crews. Frontline maintenance crews can be thought of as the unsung heroes of asset management. Functions as basic as clearing under drains, shaping ditches, clearing bridge scuppers, or maintaining catch basins extend assets by many years. The ETG encourages asset management staff to consider their maintenance colleagues as partners in the asset management plan development. Maintenance engineers and crew leaders understand the practicalities of planning to have the personnel, equipment, material, and time to perform critical, ongoing maintenance activities. A well-designed bridge or pavement only will perform as expected over its many decades if maintenance crews act promptly and treat them properly. The best intentions of an asset manager fail if pavement bases are saturated because of poor drainage or bridge elements corrode through lack of maintenance. The ETG believes that long-term asset management is complemented with the short-term planning horizons of frontline maintenance crews. If maintenance crews understand the critical importance of ongoing maintenance, they're more likely to make time in their work plans to schedule it. Assets will last longer and perform better if maintenance crew leaders understand the critical importance of their crews maintaining drainage, cleaning bridge expansion joints, sealing pavement cracks, and performing the countless other tasks to preserve assets. While maintenance crews should be on the front lines of asset management, so should be the information technology staff. Sound asset management requires improved data to identify asset location, condition, needs, and treatment costs. Building from our last example of the maintenance crews, let's consider how important data are to sound asset management. Building from our last example of the maintenance crews, let's consider how important data are to sound asset management. The maintenance crews know informally where their guardrail and culverts are, but the data may not be shared in an enterprise-wide inventory. If there is sound enterprise asset inventory, when the maintenance crews repair an asset such as a culvert, the data can be recorded, reported to the asset manager, and fed into the maintenance management and financial systems. Then, the agency better understands the condition of its assets, what it costs to maintain them, and what backlogs still exist. Data and sound information technology underlie this coordination and common understanding. For the inventories to be useful, they must be easily accessible and understandable to different users. The data also need to be geographically identified so they can be mapped. The data's utility rises when they can be integrated with financial systems, project development tools, or asset management models. Mature asset management agencies recognize that data are assets, just as are roads and bridges. The data are assets that require investment, maintenance, and protocols to ensure their long-term utility. Just as roads and bridges require maintenance, data require refreshing to be useful. Old inventories with stale data lack the accuracy to be useful to decision makers. The more stale data become, the less incentive exists for users to rely upon them. Just as agencies adopt maintenance manuals for equipment, building, and other assets, so should they consider adopting manuals and protocols for ensuring the accuracy, timeliness, and accessibility of asset data. Beyond inventories, mature asset management agencies rely upon sophisticated models Modern pavement, bridge, and maintenance management models allow agencies to analyze scenarios and perform what-if analyses. These scenarios support improved communication with legislators, MPOs, and other stakeholders. They illustrate the benefits or consequences upon future generations of the investment decisions made today. Another strategy to ingrain asset management into agency processes includes documenting the future maintenance costs when new facilities are planned or constructed. This accentuates to decision makers that new assets are not one-time costs. Instead, they are perpetual obligations the agency needs to plan for. The asset management plan supports this long-term recognition by providing a mechanism for recording future maintenance costs. The agency accentuates its long-term obligations when the financial plans capture the initial construction costs, but also forecasts the annual maintenance costs, as well as the eventual asset renewal costs. This illustrates the agency is obligating future budgeters to provide additional resources to keep the asset in sound condition. In the short-term budget, only the initial construction cost is recognized. In an asset management plan, the regular, steady increase in annual maintenance needs appears as a future need or liability. In private sector accounting, companies report on their long-term liabilities even if those liabilities are beyond the current budget. Similarly, the asset management plan can record the accruing long-term maintenance liabilities created when new assets are constructed. Recent federal statutes emphasized risk-based approaches to asset management, highway safety, and other investment decision-making processes. To integrate risk-based decisions, agencies need to train staff about risk management and incorporate risk into their decision-making processes. Managing risks equates to managing uncertainty. Many uncertainties surround 10-year asset management plans, including the risks caused by uncertain revenues, unknown climate conditions, irregular asset performance, and unpredictable traffic loadings. By understanding these risks, agencies can better inform the public of the many uncertainties surrounding their asset management plans. Agencies can't control events occurring in the next decade, yet nonetheless, agencies are expected to meet their asset management objectives. By understanding risk management, agencies better prepare themselves to identify, measure, and manage the risks they face to the asset management objectives. The better the agency understands these risks, the better it can communicate them to its partners in the MPOs, in the legislature, and within the public at large. Effective risk management complements our next topic, which is the effective communication with stakeholders. A risk-based asset management allows improved communication by capturing the long-term needs, long-term risks, and long-term consequences of current investment decisions. In a short-term budget, any long-term unmet needs are off the books. Literally, state budgets do not capture nor even acknowledge any growing backlog of deferred maintenance or declining asset conditions. Instead, budgets only capture available revenue and allocates it to certain asset categories. If all asset needs are not met, those unmet needs are ignored. As a result, growing backlogs of unmet maintenance needs go unrecognized in the state budgeting process. These needs do not evaporate, instead they grow and are passed on to future users. Asset management plans and the risks they include allow agencies to communicate if they are accruing growing backlogs of unmet need. These backlogs can be presented as part of the budgeting process and can be highlighted in budget testimony, in the STIP development process, and in the long-range planning process. The asset management plan provides a vehicle to examine a core need within the transportation planning, that it is to document the amount of investment needed to sustain our assets for today's user as well as for future generations. If our asset management plans depend upon uncertain forecasts of revenue and need, those uncertainties are risks that we can highlight and communicate in our asset management plans. By incorporating risk and by clearly communicating our investment consequences, we can better inform the public about the true state of our transportation infrastructure. In conclusion, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I and the other members of the FHWA Asset Management Expert Task Group hope it is useful and that it prompts your agency to better anticipate its emerging asset management needs. We on the ETG believe that asset management plans can improve the decision-making processes and enhance the public's understanding of the condition of our nation's infrastructure. However, to be successful, these plans need to be fully integrated into our decision-making processes. We hope these plans do not become on-time, mandatory reports that sit on shelves. Instead, we hope they catalyze decision-making to improve the long-term performance of our nation's transportation system. On behalf of the ETG, thank you for watching.